You don't need to be awake at 3 a.m., but your leg is. Clenched, burning, a sudden lock deep in the calf that drags you out of sleep like a forgotten debt. It happens quietly. No storm, no cry. Just pain, sharp and certain, reminding you that the night no longer belongs only to rest. After 60, the body doesn't break. It adapts. It shifts in places we stop watching. Muscles thin, tendons shorten, circulation stutters. And in the hours when the world softens, your body speaks up because it can't whisper any longer. But this pain isn't punishment, it's a pattern. And it can be softened, not with instruction, but with presence. 1. The magnesium. Whisper. Joan had grown used to silence. She didn't fight the night anymore, just let it pass like a long breath. But the cramps didn't honor that silence. They arrived as if the body had something urgent to say, and no other way left to say it. It began slowly, once or twice a month, just enough to curse under her breath. She called them old woman's lightning, laughed it off when she could. But lately, they came every night, sharp, precise, like clockwork written into her calves. She never told her daughter, felt silly complaining about sleep when the world had harder things. Until one night, the cramp wouldn't unclench. She sat upright in bed, teeth clenched, hand pressing against her shin, waiting for the fire to loosen. It didn't. She brought it up at her next appointment, almost as an afterthought. The doctor didn't raise an eyebrow, just said, "Your body may be asking for magnesium. It gets quiet when we get older, but not less important." Joan blinked. She hadn't eaten a green thing in days, hadn't bought seeds in months. Her dark chocolate was long gone, replaced by dry crackers and habit. That night, she stood at her stove for the first time in weeks, steamed spinach, sprinkled sesame, broke off one square of chocolate, and placed it beside her tea like a note left on a pillow. Before sleep, she flexed her toes toward the ceiling, breathed into her calves, not as treatment, as recognition. The cramps didn't disappear, but they softened, didn't scream, just tapped, like someone gently reminding her they were still waiting for a reply. And for the first time in a long time, Joan answered. 2. The cold circulation. Lester once walked every morning, not far, just the path around his garden, a loop of damp stones and wilting rosemary, enough to tell his body the day had begun. But winter crept in with quiet permission, and with it, he stopped. Stopped walking, stopped tying his shoes, stopped noticing how often he stayed folded. He told himself it was the cold, the linoleum, the ache in his hip that came and went like a memory half-formed. But what really changed was motion. The legs that once carried him now waited, still, unused, unsure if they were needed anymore. And so, the body sent a signal, a jolt just before dawn, always in the left calf, like someone knocking too hard on a door too long unopened. At first, he brushed it off, until the neighbor, wrapping her scarf in the driveway, offered something softer. Muscles don't like being forgotten. He didn't answer, but that night he found the socks she used to fold at the foot of their bed. Wool, thick, still holding her shape. He warmed them on the heater, then paced the kitchen while the kettle hummed. 12 steps, window to sink, back again. Not for steps, not for numbers, just to tell the legs they hadn't been dismissed. Now, he walks that same stretch every night. No shoes, no metrics, just the quiet friction of sock against tile, a whisper of a heat where cold once lived. He doesn't say much anymore, but sometimes, as he presses the hot water bottle against his calf, he murmurs, "You're still mine." And the muscle, wrapped in warmth, seems to ease, not from cure, but from recognition. 3. The nutrient drift. Margaret hadn't stopped eating, but meals had become smaller, simpler, safe. A few crackers, a slice of soft cheese, tea, poured the same way every day, not for taste, but for rhythm. Cooking had once been her language. A pan of lentils meant care, a sprig of parsley meant presence. Now, the stove remained cold most nights, and the shelves were quieter than they used to be. The cramps came gradually, not every night, but often enough that she stopped crossing her legs in bed, started lying more still, as if stillness would protect her from the jolt. At her appointment, the doctor asked what she was eating. She listed it off, confident at first, then paused. When had she last touched spinach, or cut open an orange, or chewed anything that left green between her teeth? Your muscles speak the language of minerals, the doctor said softly. They forget how to move when you stop feeding them memory. That night, Margaret stood at her stove longer than she expected to. She sautéed greens in olive oil, scattered pumpkin seeds over lentils. Let the scent fill the kitchen like someone coming home. She ate slowly, quietly. Not because she was hungry, but because her legs had asked for something she hadn't realized they missed. Now, beside her stove, a small wooden bowl lives. She fills it without fanfare. Almonds, seeds, dried apricots. Not medicine, not performance, just recognition. Of a body that no longer wants extravagance, only memory in bite-sized pieces. And each time she lifts a spoon, she whispers, not aloud, but inward, "I'm still feeding you." And her muscles, still half stubborn, respond with less pain. Not because she fixed something, but because she remembered to nourish what had been quietly fading. 4. The thirst that stays quiet. Harold never felt thirsty. Not in the way young people do. That big gulp after a run, that dry mouth in the middle of a sentence. His thirst was quieter, more forgettable. Coffee at 6, wine at 7, nothing after. He didn't think much of it until the cramps started coming at 3 a.m., like something curling inside him, tight as regret. He'd jolt awake, press his hand to his calf, breathe through clenched teeth as the muscle locked like a drawer jammed too many times. He didn't talk about it. Pain that came in the dark felt like something he should endure, not share. Then one afternoon, at the library, he sat in on a community wellness talk, mostly to stay warm. A woman spoke softly, her voice shaped like kindness. "The body stores memory in water," she said, "and when there's not enough, it clings, tightens, protects." Harold didn't write it down, but he remembered. That night, he warmed a cup of water just enough to hold, let it sit by the bed like company. Before turning off the lamp, he drank 3 slow sips, not because he was parched, because he wanted to offer something he hadn't in years, a gesture of replenishment. The cramps didn't come, but that wasn't the point. Now, every night, he leaves that cup like a quiet conversation. Not medicine, not routine, just attention. And each time he swallows, he imagines the water carrying the things he forgot to feel back into the places that still remember how to hold him. Not healing, just recognition of the body's request and his choice to answer gently. 5. The forgotten stretch. Ruth used to think stretching was something young people did. Dancers, athletes, women in magazines reaching for sky-colored yoga mats. She wasn't stiff, she told herself, just steady, predictable. She rose slowly, poured tea, read the obituaries before the headlines. Nothing fancy, just rhythm. But one morning, as she stepped toward the window, a knot pulled tight behind her thigh, sudden, sharp, like someone yanked a thread that had frayed too long. She gasped, sat down, waited for the ache to retreat. It did, but something else remained. A question she couldn't name. Later that afternoon, she heard a voice on the radio, a physiotherapist, quiet and kind. "Stretching," she said, "isn't about flexibility. It's about reminding the body it hasn't been folded for good." That night, Ruth sat on the edge of the bed, slid one heel forward, flexed her foot, let the calf lengthen, not like a task, like an apology. She didn't reach far, she didn't count. She just breathed, letting the tension speak and letting herself answer without resistance. The next night, she did it again. Not because she believed in change, but because the act felt honest. A way to greet the legs she used to ignore until they shouted. Now, before turning off the lamp, Ruth unfolds herself one part at a time. Toes, knees, back, no routine, just recognition. Of a body that has held her through decades of motion without once being asked if it still wanted to move. And as she lies back into the softness, she whispers, not to God, not to anyone else, just to her own bones, "You're still mine." And the ache, when it comes now, feels more like memory than warning. There are kinds of grief that never touch the obituary page. Grief that doesn't come from losing someone, but from stepping away from something quietly until you realize it no longer waits for you. Like how you used to walk barefoot in the morning, or drink water before coffee, or stretch without thinking. How you once fed your body before you fed the day. And now, there's a space where those things used to be. Not loud, not tragic, just empty. You don't talk about it, because it doesn't seem worth naming. What do you call the loss of a mineral you forgot to care about? Of a calf muscle that clenches like a fist when no one is fighting? But your body notices. It remembers. It remembers how movement felt when it wasn't earned, when it wasn't a struggle or a risk or a plan. It remembers being fed, being stretched, being welcomed like a friend, not tolerated like a burden. And when that memory grows hungry, it clenches, it seizes, it screams through the smallest parts, a calf in the dark, a foot that won't uncurl. This is grief, not loud, but deep. A mourning for rituals that slipped away while you were still here. But the beauty of this grief is that it doesn't ask for closure. It asks for return. You don't need to fix what left. You only need to notice what's still trying to stay. The sip you didn't take, the stretch you forgot, the warmth your legs once knew. They are still waiting for you. And when you answer, not with regret, but with one slow movement, grief turns back into presence. Maybe your body isn't asking for change. Maybe it's asking for company, not routines, not discipline, just to not be left behind your own life. You don't need to stretch like a dancer or hydrate like an athlete. You don't need magnesium charts or mobility apps. You just need to remember that the small things you once gave yourself without effort still matter even when they no longer announce themselves. The heel pressed into the mattress, the quiet sip of water in the dark, the handful of seeds you used to sprinkle without thinking. These aren't habits, they're handshakes. Between you and the part of your body that still believes in waking with you, you haven't lost your strength. You've just lost the rhythm that let it arrive gently. And that rhythm has never stopped playing. It's just been muffled beneath years of noise that told you the only way to live was to move fast and ignore what hurts. But now you're allowed to listen again, to greet your legs before standing, to whisper to your ankles before they carry you, to eat not because you must, but because your muscles still want to remember how to move without punishment. This is not about fixing, it's about returning, not to the body you once had, but to the relationship you forgot was sacred. And the sacred is never in the spectacular, it's in the sip, the breath before the stretch. And if all you ever reclaim is the moment you pause before moving again, then that too is healing. Not all healing begins in daylight. Sometimes it starts in the dark, in the silence after pain, in the breath that returns after the body has clenched and let go. If you wake at 3 a.m. and the ache is still there, know this: you are not broken. You are not late. You are only being asked to listen to a part of you that still believes you deserve care. The body doesn't punish. It remembers. And when we stop remembering it in return, it calls to us the only way it can, through tightness, through trembling, through the kind of stillness that feels like something waiting. But you can answer without noise, without fixing everything. A warm sock, a hand on your own leg, a quiet ritual before sleep that says, I know you're still trying, and if you forget tomorrow, the body will wait again. It has always waited, because love doesn't require perfection. It just wants presence. You are still here, still breathing, still capable of starting over each night with less force and more reverence. So, if one part of your body spoke tonight, let the rest of you listen. And if the pain returns, don't panic. It's just a whisper asking you not to leave. You can answer with warmth, with water, with one small movement that tells the world, I'm still learning how to stay, and will be here too, walking beside you at the pace you now belong to. Until then, take one slower breath and take care of your story.